Hello everyone, welcome to my fourth video in my series about the complete rule set of Space Empires and all its expansions, a game created by Jim Crone and published by GMT Games. 4 videos, that's all it takes to cover the famous 4X: exploration, exploitation, extermination, and the last one we're missing, expansion. Expansion is another way of calling your tech tree and the strategic choices you'll make to develop your empire, build your war fleet, and ultimately be able to surprise and outdo your opponents. That being said, and before I get started, I'd like to say a word about the exact scope of the rules I'll be covering in my videos. The official rules of Space Empires, the master rulebook as it appears in the latest expansion All Good Things, take the form of some 30 pages, the basic rules, followed by some 15 pages of optional rules. So, you know me with this kind of game, I don't hesitate for a second, I want the best possible experience, so I take all the rules, optional or not. But I understand that not everyone thinks like that. And what's more, there are incompatibilities. Choosing some optional rules excludes others. So, in my videos, I've decided to present the game as I, Jean-Michel Grosjeu, play it, in other words, including the vast majority of optional rules, but I'll draw your attention whenever I talk about optional rules. That way, you'll know what is central and what is optional, and you'll be able to make choices other than mine. Okay, so our subject right now is expansion, and we'll start with an optional rule, research centers and research points, RPs. Without the optional rule, everything works with traditional CPs, construction points, that are already familiar. And if that's what you want to do, I refer you to the rulebook. Here, I'll teach you the optional version based on research points. At the beginning of the game, each player gets one research center which he sets up on his home planet. And while every home planet, as we already know, produces 20 CPs, 20 construction points, with each economic phase, well, with its research center, it also produces 5 research points. Research points are gray matter, they are the points you spend to advance your technology. And it's important to see the two types of points, construction and research, as two completely different resources. On the production sheet, they are counted in 2 separate blocks, and I insist on this point because in the first versions of the game, there were mechanisms for converting CPs into RPs, but now in the definitive rules, this no longer exists. CPs are CPs, RPs are RPs, and you can never turn one into the other. RPs are therefore produced exclusively by research centers, 5 points every 3 turns. But then, problem, there can only be one research center per colony. We'll see in the next video that home planets are a little more permissive, but that's not the point here. So, if you want to increase your intellectual production, the most standard solution is to discover a new planet, then colonize it, then build a research center there, which costs 5 CPs, 5 construction points. The research center costs 5 CPs to build, and then, during each economic phase from the next onwards, in 3 turns, it starts producing RPs. But beware, your home planet, as we've just seen, produces 20 CPs. With its research center, it still produces 20 CPs plus 5 RPs. But for a colony, it's not the same. Adding a research center means specializing the planet, which will then only produce RPs and not CPs anymore. So in our example, we've built a research center on the planet Valhalla, which is a colony with a colony 1 marker. So during the economic phase, this Valhalla colony produces 5 plus 1 equals 6 research points, 6 RPs. It is specialized by the research center and no longer produces CPs. At the end of its development, when it's at full capacity, the Valhalla colony will produce 10 RPs per economic phase, making a total of 15 with the 5 RPs from the home planet. And then, of course, during the economic phase, just after collecting his research points, the player can spend them. And while CPs are used to build ships and structures, RPs are used to develop new technologies. All available technologies are listed on the technology progression sheet. Let's take an example. We are going to look at the Move technology. As its name suggests, researching this technology means trying to improve the movement of your ships. There's a number 1 in the start column, which means that at the beginning of the game, before any research is carried out, every player gets a level 1 in Move technology. In other words, your ships will always be able to move even without any particular technology. But let's say that I am interested in upgrading this technology to level 2 so that my ships can move a little faster. The cost of this level 2 is written in tiny letters next to the number 2, 20. This means that upgrading to level 2 costs 20 research points. Let's suppose that with 2 research centers, I produce 5 plus 10 equals 15 research points per economic phase. First phase, I cash in 15 RPs, but it's not enough to buy level 2 of the Move technology. No problem, I keep my 15 RPs, and 3 turns later, in the next economic phase, I start the phase with a stock of 15 RPs, but in addition, I earn 15 new RPs produced by my 2 research centers, making a total of 30. Now, I have enough to buy my technology level, I spend 20, and I draw a circle around level 2 to show that my empire has now reached level 2 in the Move technology. And since I have spent 20, I still have 10 RPs in stock. You see, it's very simple. If you like accounting, you'll love this. If I spend 25 research points later, I can move up to level 3. The rightmost circle in the row indicates the level you've reached. Every economic phase, the unspent research points are carried over to the next economic phase, 15 points, then 30 points, and please note that the maximum carryover is 30 RPs. Once you've accumulated 30 RPs, anything extra you produce is either spent right away or lost. Great! You've improved your ship's movement capacity with the Move technology, but what does it actually do? This table found in the game rules shows how a ship's movement changes according to its Move technology. Look how easy it is to read. I've got a ship, any ship, let's assume it's a scout, and its Move technology level is 3. That corresponds to the third line of the table. You remember that in this game, turns are grouped in sets of 3 with an economic phase at the end. During the movement phase of the first turn, we look at the number of hexagons numbered 1 on the diagram. 1 hexagon, so the ship can move 1 hexagon. 1, okay, it's not very exciting, but on the next turn, turn 2, we look at hexagons numbered 2. There are 2 of them. This time, the ship can move 2 hexagons. And on turn 3, the same, he can move 2 hexagons. In 3 turns, it moved a total of 5 hexagons. That's the effect of the Move technology. This technology can be upgraded to level 7, where ships move 9 hexagons per group of 3 turns, in other words, 3 hexagons per turn. 7 is the maximum level that can be reached in this technology. And a little clarification before moving on, you cannot buy 2 levels at once for the same technology. For example, if at the beginning of the economic phase I have 25 RPs, I can upgrade 1 level in the ship size technology and 1 level in the tactics technology. 10 plus 15 equals 25. But I cannot use all my RPs to increase my ship size technology by 2 levels at once, even if the cost would be also 25 RPs. Increasing by 2 levels at once is just forbidden. And in the end, let's face it, it's not all that complicated. Technology is easy. But wait, there's a very original system in Space Empires which I've never seen elsewhere and which adds a new layer of realism at the cost of a little extra complexity. Here we go. Let's suppose the situation as follows. Yellow player controls 2 planets, his home planet and another fully developed colony. A research center on each planet, a shipyard on the home planet and a scout at the far end of Yellow sector in empty space. And on his technology progression sheet, Yellow player hasn't circled anything yet. He's still at the starting point. Now, let's suppose we are in the economic phase and let's assume that Yellow player has stockpiled a good number of RPs, let's say 30. Then he decides to increase his move technology. He spends 20 RPs and circles level 2 on the move line. Okay. But then, if we think about it from inside the universe described by the game, what's just happened? Yellow player has improved his engine technology and the ships he builds are now faster. So, if afterwards, even in the same economic phase, he builds a new scout ship SC2 with his home planet shipyard, this ship benefits from the new technology and can move an extra hexagon every third turn as we've just seen. Okay, but what about ship SC1? For this ship, nothing has changed. It's at the other end of the Yellow sector. It's true that on the home planet, engineers know how to make engines better, but for this faraway ship, that doesn't change anything. And this is exactly the situation described in the Space Empires rules. When the new SC2 ship is built, Yellow player pulls out a sheet called the Ship Technology Sheet. Each player has his own. And this sheet is used to mark the individual technological level of each ship. So let's see how it works. I promise it's quite manageable. Each ship that Yellow player can build has its own line in the table. The SC1 and the SC2 scout ships are here. And so as soon as Yellow player builds the SC2 ship, as he has already purchased the level 2 techno for the move technology, he notes on this sheet that this SC2 ship has the level 2 in the move technology. So you see how interesting it is. Here we see that Yellow Empire as a whole has mastered the move technology up to level 2. And we can see that the SC2 scout ship has this level 2 move technology because when it was built by the shipyard, Yellow Empire had already mastered this technology. Scout ship number 1, on the other hand, does not have this technology. It came out of the Yellow shipyards at a time when the level 2 move technology was not yet known. And so, and this is the great originality of this game, you can have 2 units on the board, SC1 and SC2, which are normally exactly the same, but which in fact don't have the same characteristics. In our example, they don't have the same movement capacity. And you need to refer to the ship's technology progression sheet to find out exactly who has which technology. But of course, there is a way for the SC1 ship to update its technology, and to do that, it must go back to a shipyard. Let's assume that in the economic phase, Yellow player has built a shipyard on his new colony, Valhalla. In the next movement phase, the SC1 scout moves 1 hexagon. And then, on the next turn, he moves another hexagon and arrives at the shipyard, not the one on the home planet and therefore not the one that built it, but it doesn't matter, a shipyard is a shipyard. But just being there isn't enough. Now he must spend an entire turn in the shipyard. So on its next turn, if it doesn't move at all, it can be technologically updated at the cost of a number of CPs equal to its hull size. Since its size is 1, which is what the times 1 on his counter means, for 1 CP is immediately upgraded to all the technologies mastered by the Yellow Empire. Here for 1 CP, he is upgraded to move level 2, but if there were a larger gap between levels or a larger number of technologies, he would have been upgraded everywhere for the same overall price of 1 CP. And this technology update requires you to pay CPs when you are in the middle of a normal turn. We are not during an economic phase. This means that if you are planning this kind of expense, you need to think about during the previous economic phase to save some CPs to spend over the next 3 turns. The upgrade expense is noted here. At the end of the resource phase, unspent CPs and RPs are carried over to the next resource phase. This means you can accumulate CPs and RPs over several 3-turn cycles to build up stocks and buy something big and expensive in one go. And for the CPs, this constitutes a stock that you can use to update your fleet by going back to a shipyard as we've just seen. And of course, you only carry over what you haven't spent. In our example, that would be 17 CPs, not 18. But, as we've already seen, the maximum carryover is 30. But despite this limit, you could, for example, keep 35 CPs at the end of a resource phase to spend 5 CPs to upgrade your ships during the following turns, and still carry over 30 CPs to the next resource phase. A penny is a penny. The best war empires are based on the best accounting. And that's it. Now it's time to recap so that everything is clear in your minds, and I'll take this opportunity to add a few clarifications and other special cases. Technological progress means research, and that requires research centers, a maximum of 1 per planet, which can be built for 5 CPs. And since in the economic phase RPs are collected before units are built, of course, research centers don't produce RPs in the turn they are built. And each player has 1 research center on his own planet at the very beginning of the game. Once you've collected a few research points, you can spend them on technological upgrades in the economic phase. There's plenty to choose from, as we'll see in the next videos. Note that you cannot go up 2 levels at a time. So you can move up 1 level in several technologies if you have enough RPs to spend, but if you want to move up more than 1 level in a given technology, you must wait for the next economic phase, 1 level per economic phase. Moreover, the technological progress you buy only applies to ships built after the technological gain. The others must just fly back to a shipyard in order to be upgraded. As a result, there may be ships of the same type but with different technological levels. And of course, these ships cannot form a group. All ships within the same group must have exactly the same levels in all technologies. And voila! I'll stop here for now, and we have now completed the 4X, Exploration Video 1, Exploitation Video 2, Extermination Video 3 and Expansion with this video number 4. So, that's all very well and good, and it gives the feeling that we are already finished. But not at all. We've still got a few videos to go, like the following one, video number 5, where we'll be browsing through a comfortable inventory of new ships and new technologies.